When Donald Trump stepped onto the illuminated stage of historic Constitution Hall in Washington, thousands of people in the hall rose to their feet in applause. He was the star of the night. As he walked confidently onto the stage, he stood right behind the microphone and listened to the energy of the hall for a while. The wind was blowing outside, the U.S. flags were waving gently, the connection between the country's past and present echoed in the atmosphere inside. This speech was no ordinary speech. It was one of the breaking points of the election campaign. The media, supporters, opponents, everyone in front of the screens waited to see what he would say. "America," Trump began, his voice echoing in every corner of the hall. "We are a nation whose roots reach the seas, the mountains, the stars. What makes us strong is not just our economy, but our history, our family, our beliefs." The hall erupted in applause again. Trump's gaze shifted to the front rows of the stage for a moment, then to the very back corner. Everyone was focused. At that moment, a hand went up from the crowd. It was a white, calloused hand. An old man was rising from his seat. He wore a navy blue jacket that resembled a sailor's uniform with a faded U.S. Navy badge on his lapel. His face was covered in the marks of time. Someone was walking onto the stage. As security guards hurried into action, the man raised his hand and shouted, "Mr. President, I won't let you interrupt me, but I have to tell you something." Trump narrowed his eyes and stopped the security. The crowd suddenly went silent. All cameras were on the old man. It was a moment no one expected. The presentation had stopped, but it was as if a real story was just beginning. "My name is Jonathan Harlan," the man said. His voice was cracked but determined. "I served 38 years in the U.S. Navy. I've seen 6 continents. I've lost ships in storms. I've left friends without a grave. But I've never forgotten one thing, Mr. Trump: what value means." Trump nodded, stepped back, and handed the microphone to the old man. This was his time. The crowd looked at each other in wonder, some clutching their cell phones, social media waiting for this moment like a bomb ready to explode. "It was 1971, Captain Harlan continued. We were on a mission in the middle of the Atlantic, the middle of the Cold War. We had a young crew on board, mostly kids in their 20s. One night the radio went dead, a storm broke. Winds blowing at 40 knots, along with huge waves, started to tilt our ship. Everyone was in a panic, except for one man." The old man paused. His eyes were distant. He was reliving that moment. Not a sound came from the crowd. "That man was a Filipino engineer. His name was Sergio. He was the lowest-ranking officer on the ship. But that night he pressed his chest against the control panel and tried to balance the entire system by hand. When others ran, he stayed. Because courage is about character, not rank." Trump had taken a step back. His hands were forward, his gaze serious. His eyes were not the usual defiant look. This time they were a desire to learn. "Sergio lost his life that night, Mr. President, but he taught us something. Manliness is not about showing off, but about standing." There was no applause. Harlan paused. The silence of the crowd spoke louder than the applause. The old captain turned his head to Trump. "There are thousands of people who will vote for you today, but they need not only what you say, but also your silence to believe you. Because in times of storm, the nation looks to their leader, not to his voice." Trump took a deep breath. For a moment, he seemed to want to take the microphone back, but he changed his mind. Because this stage was no longer his, it was Harlan's. Dear viewers, if you were also impressed by how far the story has come, please subscribe to the channel. We will continue to share such stories with you. Because sometimes a captain's silent stance speaks louder than the noise of a country. The old man started talking again. "My son stayed in Vietnam, Mr. Trump. He never came back. I speak on his behalf. On behalf of the silence of thousands of soldiers like him. They don't appear in the media. They don't appear on posters. But their story is more important than your speech." Slowly, murmurs began to be heard from the hall. Every sentence of the old captain was piercing the hearts of the crowd, spreading like an echo. Harlan turned his eyes to the audience. "I have never heard a single politician say this in my life. I make mistakes too. That's where your strength comes from, Mr. Trump. People don't expect you to be perfect. They just expect you to be honest. They don't have to like you, but they want to trust you." Trump's face changed. At that moment, an image appeared on the television screens. A man from the past was standing in front of him, telling him the true values of a nation, and Trump was listening silently for the first time. A young girl in the crowd wiped away her tears. A man started to applaud silently, then a few more people. Then the entire hall stood up and applauded slowly but firmly. This was not for the show, but for the experience. "If you are going to be a leader," Captain Harlan said, "then be not only a voice but also a bearer of silence. Because leadership is not about silencing people, it's about hearing their pain." Trump slowly stepped forward and took the microphone. His eyes were locked on Harlan. "Thank you for the lesson you taught me and everyone here," he said. "Today it wasn't my speech that mattered. Today it was a message from one man on behalf of the silent heroes that won." Dear viewers, stories like this tell the true America. If you're curious about the rest of this story, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and share your thoughts in the comments. Because sometimes the things that really need to be talked about are the ones that are least talked about. Trump hugged the old man. The stage lights were on differently at that moment. One man had stopped talking, another man had made history, and that was just the beginning. The silence in the hall had turned into a kind of echo after the old captain's words. Trump was no longer alone on the podium. Next to him stood the shadow of a man who had seen storms. The lights had dimmed a little more. The atmosphere on the stage had transformed from an ordinary election rally to one of the most emotional moments in American history. Harlan had not left the stage after completing his speech. His eyes were still on Trump. Trump, on the other hand, was looking not at the crowd but into the eyes of the old captain, as if he were being put through a test. And this test was not about getting votes. It was about character. Trump took the microphone, his voice lower this time. "Today on this stage we saw more than a ship captain. We heard the honor of the past, the voices of forgotten heroes, the names of lost sons. A few people who were preparing to applaud slowly lowered their hands. This time they just wanted to listen. Because Trump had deviated from his usual energetic style, his tone was quieter, deeper. As someone who lost a son in war," Trump said, "some of the values of this country are not as simple as they are portrayed on television. Some things are learned through experience." Then he turned his head slowly to Harlan. "What I learned from you today, I will carry with me." The crowd began to applaud slowly, but the applause was more of a thank you than a political one. A young sailor sitting in the back row of the room stood up. His uniform was new, but there was a fresh sense of admiration in his eyes. "Captain Harlan," he called out, "would you mind telling us the rest of your story?" Trump took a step back, nodded. The captain took the microphone and was silent for a moment. "The rest of this story is actually the story of all of you," he said. "But let me tell it, because some things that are not told are forgotten, and everything that is forgotten is erased from the memory of a country." A few people in the back rows started to record videos. The excerpts of this conversation went viral on social media. A Twitter thread had already started. # Captain interrupted, but he taught. The captain continued. "After Sergio's death, I stayed at sea for another 17 years. A part of me remained in every port. I lost a friend every time I went. But what I remember most was the silence. It's easy to give orders as a commander, but it's hard to be silent and understand a young man's fear." The crowd sighed deeply. "In 1984, the captain said, while on a mission in the Persian Gulf, one of my crew members made a mistake. He put the ship in danger. I was supposed to relieve him, but I didn't, because that mistake was the result of fear, and I saw my own youth in his eyes." Trump nodded. In these stories was not just the spirit of a man, but of a nation. "Today," Captain Harlan said, "many young people look to leaders like you, Mr. Trump, to guide their lives. They applaud power and follow the voice, but teach them this: sometimes silence is braver than shouting." A woman stood up in the crowd. Tears welled in her eyes. "My father was a captain too," she said. I lost him as a child, but today, through your words, I found a part of him again. Thank you." Captain Harlan slowly brought his hands to his chest. He bowed respectfully, then he offered the microphone to Trump, but Trump did not take it this time. "Captain," he said softly, "before you leave the stage, would you like to say one more thing? Your words echo louder than mine." Harlan took a step back, then stepped forward again. "My son's name was Michael. For him, for Sergio, for this country, I would like to tell you one last story." The crowd fell silent again. "When Michael was 8, he first asked me, 'Why are you so far away, Dad?' I couldn't be honest with him. I said, 'I'm working.' But I was scared. I hadn't learned what it meant to be a father because my father hadn't come back from the war either. This country grew silent from generation to generation. We didn't know how to hold our sons." Many people in the room bowed their heads, because this story was no longer just a captain's story, it was everyone's story. I last hugged Michael in 1992. He looked into my eyes before boarding the plane. He didn't say anything, because there was no need anymore. He kept quiet, and I lived with that silence for years. Dear viewer, if these words touched your heart, please subscribe to our channel. Real stories are not only lived, they are also shared. The more you share, the more people hear, understand, and maybe change. Captain Harlan took an old photo from his pocket. He handed it to Trump. "This is Michael. I don't want anything from you, Mr. Trump. But if you carry this photo in your pocket, maybe one day you will remember this young man's eyes when you make a decision." Trump took the photo. He looked at it for a few seconds. Then he put his right hand to his heart. "I will," he said. The applause from the crowd first came one by one, then spread like a wave. People stood up. A political rally had turned into a silent moment of silence. "This country," Trump said, taking the microphone again, "is a country that has grown not just through great victories, but through small losses. The most valuable thing I learned today is that BAZN is the most powerful leadership comes from listening." A young boy hugged his mother in one corner of the stage. Perhaps for the first time, he truly understood what leadership meant. Trump took a deep breath before saying his final sentence. "Today I did not speak. Today America spoke. And sometimes the story of a ship captain leaves a greater mark than the words of a president." Dear viewers, if you were moved by this narrative, do not forget to like the video, subscribe, and share your own story in the comments, because maybe you will be the light in someone else's dark night. Trump and Harlan looked at each other. There was no competition in their eyes. It was like a handover. The stage lights dimmed a little more. The energy of the stage was about to close like a book, but the captain turned one last time and said, "Mr. Trump, my generation is now falling behind, but your generation is still writing the future of this country. Please carry values forward, not memories, because ships rust, but honor does not." And with that sentence, he left the stage. The stage was now silent. Captain Harlan had slowly stepped off the stage after delivering his remarks, but his presence was still there. Trump stood alone at the microphone, but this was not a lonely kind, but a thoughtful one. All eyes were on him, but this time they were not only curious about what he would say, but also how he would say it. Because everyone knew now that tonight was a turning point. Trump raised his head. His eyes scanned the hall. He was silent for a few seconds before he began his speech. Those few seconds were worth a lifetime. Then he spoke in a slow but clear voice. "I have spoken in many halls, on many podiums in my life, but none of them were as meaningful as tonight." A buzz spread through the hall. The vast majority of the audience was still in shock. Some were wiping away tears, while others were recording the historic moment with their cell phones. The videos had already reached millions of views on social media. The hashtag #AnOldShipCaptain was the most trending topic in the country. "Captain Harlan didn't just tell me a story today," Trump said. "He left me a legacy. He reminded me of a forgotten virtue, quiet courage." There was no applause, because people were still waiting for what Trump would say. This silence was the most powerful moment a leader could have, and Trump didn't miss it. "I have Michael's photo in my pocket. It's only been a few minutes, but it has already reminded me of so much. Every man who carries it has not just a piece of paper on his back, but the honor of a country. With these words, Trump reached into his jacket pocket. He slowly took out the photo and placed it on the stage at the very front of the hall. His eyes were teary, the cameras were shooting close-ups, and the millions of people in front of the screen could sense that this moment was not fake. Trump continued, "We have forgotten something in this country. We have started shouting so much about being strong that we have forgotten what it means to be strong. Harlan showed me that sometimes strength is just waiting. It is being silent. It is being able to look a child in the eye and say, 'I understand you.'" An elderly woman stood up from the audience. Leaning on her cane, she shouted, "My son is stuck in Iraq. Today I made peace with him." The crowd burst into applause. Because this story was no longer just Trump's stage, this story had become the story of people all across the country. Dear viewers, if these moments deeply affected you, please subscribe to our channel. Because this was not just a speech, it was a confrontation, and we will continue to share these real stories. Trump started speaking again, but this time his voice was different. It was no longer the voice of a politician, but of a man, a husband, a father. "I will tell Melania something when I go home today," he said. "I will say, 'You raised me with your silence.' Today I understood the value of that." The crowd gave a standing ovation. A woman's voice was heard. "We want to see people, not just leaders." The applause grew louder. Trump placed his hands on either side of the microphone. He slowly pulled himself closer. "I was on stage today for a campaign speech, but when I leave the stage, I will be a different man. Because Harlan reminded me, it is not just the victories that make America great, it is the sacrifices. And some sacrifices are indescribable. They are only born." Trump called the captain to the stage. Captain Harlan walked slowly again. This time with support, but with an upright stance. Trump shook his hand, then turned to the crowd. "This man taught me a lesson, not with words, but with his bearing. If we are truly to make this country great again, we must first learn to stand, not just mine, but all of ours." The captain did not want the microphone, but Trump forced it. Harlan swallowed. "I do not trust you, Mr. Trump," he said. The crowd was shocked. "But I want to believe you, and today you gave me a reason to." That sentence changed Trump's expression. There was no arrogance, no anger, just acceptance. "I did not win just one vote tonight," Trump said. "I have gained a certain trust, and to be able to carry that trust is a greater honor than being president." Captain Harlan nodded. Then he turned to Trump. Michael may be watching right now, and for the first time he is smiling quietly. The crowd rose to their feet in an instant. They fell silent. Everyone except a few put their hands to their hearts. Perhaps at that moment a nation was making peace with its past. Politics had fallen silent, and humanity had spoken. Dear viewer, if this story reminded you of anything, a father, a child, a spouse, a soldier, or just yourself, share it with us in the comments. And remember, every story we tell on this channel touches real life. Don't forget to subscribe because sometimes just one sentence can change a life. Trump left the microphone on stage. He and the captain walked slowly. The stage lights dimmed. There was nothing left to say. This scene had gone down in history. Only a few words echoed in the hall in everyone's mind. Ships rust, but honor does not. And the curtain closed.